On this episode of One on One, we're going to talk with somebody very important to the area. He ascended pretty quick, and he gives his wife a lot of credit. Who is the guest? You'll have to wait and see. It's all next on One on One. One on One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. All right, welcome back to One on One. Very interesting guest today, very familiar face. And we're going to go down memory lane with the judge, Judge Richard. Good to see you.
Same here.
You know, I saw you at the Coach Zush ceremony. And to say that y'all wear y'all passion on y'all sleeves is an understatement. And I think Thibodeau is a lot like that. But take me down memory lane. What's the earliest years you can remember?
The earliest years I can remember, when my dad got out the war, I built a house on Himalaya Street, which was about 2 blocks off of Canal Boulevard across from Stark Field. And Mom and Dad dressed us up. My brother had an older brother, about 1.5 years older than I was. Dressed us up real warm. It was an icy, cold day, and we went outside in the backyard, and Daddy built a fire with some limbs and stuff. I don't remember what happened after he built the fire, but I remember standing there. And that was probably the earliest I can remember of life, you know.
Thibodeau's always been a quiet, quaint town. At least that's my opinion. We moved when I was 3, so I don't have a real good recollection of it. But it seems to be changing a little bit now. It's getting bigger. It stayed quiet for a long time, didn't it?
It did. You know, Thibodeau was kind of different from Houma to a certain extent. Houma had a lot of oil and gas industry. So that meant a lot of transient workers came in from Mississippi and Alabama, and we had some too that went to work for McDermott, but we didn't have the oil and gas industry that Houma had. So we had farmers and homegrown people. So everybody knew everybody, like when you were talking to Michelle, because we didn't have a lot of transient people. And I think that was, you know, I remember playing baseball against St. Francis, and the catcher was David Moneyhun. We didn't have any Moneyhuns in Thibodeau. And he was a great guy, good ball player, but we didn't have Moneyhuns, you know.
I want to talk about your schooling a little bit. We're going to progress as we go along. What's the first school you went to?
Well, I was in the public school system, and the first school I went to was Thibodeau Elementary. Funny part about that, I was born in April, my brother in December. My mother went to talk to the principal at the elementary whether or not I could get into first grade with, kindergarten, get behind my brother, since we were so close in age. But I remember running away from school. I told my brother, I was in the front yard for some reason, I said, I'm going home. And started walking down 7th Street and was looking at the coming attractions at the Dixie Theater when a black car pulled up, grabbed me, put me in the car, and that was the end of my kindergarten days until next year. So.
Were you sort of feeling like you were a rebel way back in kindergarten?
No, my brother was the nonconformist. I was always pretty much a conformist. He was a tough guy to deal with. And went through the public school system to the 7th grade.
Yeah.
And my brother through the 9th grade. And Mom and Dad finally decided they could afford the $90 a year for tuition at Thibodeau College for each of us. So they sent us to Thibodeau College because they were impressed with some of the boys that had gone to Thibodeau College and the manners they had and how well mannered they were. So 8th grade to senior was at Thibodeau College, and my brother from 10th grade. If you have any Mir blood in you, you're related to me. I don't know if you have, because the Mirs came from the St. John area, and I think that's where your daddy and them were raised.
I've heard the Mir name quite a bit, but I've also heard the Richard name
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Down Abbey Road.
Down
Uncle
Abbey
Norman,
Road,
that whole-
Charles Richard and Louise,
Yeah, that's all my.
all
That's
your
my elder.
first cousins.
Yeah, first cousin. Say elder. So they'll send me an email saying, why'd you have to say
Yeah,
that?
I know.
So you're going to, when I think of Thibodeau and so many people I interviewed, I had someone one-on-one, like Luke Ford. and
Coach
different-
me,
Yeah.
coach me.
And I've always just sensed the longevity of it all. They stayed where they were. Coach Zush, we'll get into Coach Zush in a little while. They stayed for the longest time. It wasn't, let me coach for 2 years
Right,
and then leave.
go somewhere.
They were there.
Right.
And when you look at Luke Ford, you think, can there be a nicer guy?
Huh.
But he was pretty stern too, wasn't he?
He was. Good coach, too. He coached us
Yeah.
in ninth grade and was an assistant football coach when E.P. Leday was our coach, and then Coach Zush came the senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our junior class, had a lot to do with that. We were 0-9 in 1961, and we played Ascension Catholic our last game. They were 0-9, and we tied 6-6. So Brother Linus came in one day. I was president of class, and I called me, and I thought we were going to have a class meeting. He closed the door. He said, no, we're going to talk about the football program at Thibodeau College. And everybody kind of gave what they thought. I remember saying, Thibodeau High had Tick Tatum and about 15 coaches, and they were on a roll. And Coach Leday coached basketball right after football, Coach DeStefano coached baseball. And we felt we needed a full-time football coach, and he might have coached track, like some football coaches did at the end of the season. But primarily he was our football coach. And was he a coach? One of the best coaches in this area. And that's apparently we had something to do with him being the coach, because he became the coach.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
You were surrounded by good people. But in all fairness, they were surrounded by good students, good players.
True.
When he called you in, that had to make you feel good that he was sort of asking your opinion, wasn't he?
It did. It made us feel kind of bad because Coach Leday was a good guy, but he was in basketball. He was a good basketball coach. Mm-hmm. We just felt we needed a full-time football coach. And I was at Thibodeau Junior High in the 7th grade when Coach Zush was the head coach at Thibodeau Junior High. And I'm going to tell you, more people will go and watch Thibodeau Junior High play football than Thibodeau High School. They had Don Schwab and those guys. Yeah. Schwab was in the 9th grade, and they had a football team. The only game they would lose if they lost any was Houma Junior High, and they had a good team too. Doug Meyer and those guys.
Yeah.
They had good football coaches. Schwab was strong as a bull and could run a 10 flat 100. I remember seeing him, Joe LaBruza, and Tommy Boudreau, who Don Schwab said was the best athlete ever in Thibodeau, and he was. Good friend of mine. And I was behind him, and we had a baseball game against St. Francis that night or something at Stark Field. We were watching the track meet, and they took off running from behind. We could see him from behind. You couldn't tell who won, whether LaBruza, Schwab, or Scrum won, but LaBruza won. Schwab finished second, and Scrum, Tommy Boudreau, finished third.
You said Scrum, which reminds me about Thibodeau. Every one of my cousins has a nickname.
Everybody. I had a nickname. My nickname was Reach. Nobody had a real name. It was hard. Listen, my daddy's nickname was Bill, and his real name was Godfrey. How you get Bill out of Godfrey, I'll never know. So in the phone book, they had to put Godfrey Bill Reach on.
But I mean, it's just something endearing to Thibodeau And I don't know if that stretches out into the bayous of Lafourche, if that's an inner Thibodeau kind of deal, but the nickname, when I'd hear my cousins being called different names and somebody would come up and say, a Stogie did this, and I'm going, well, who the heck is Stogie?
I know it.
Well, that's your cousin.
And you carry those names too.
Right.
Well, Connie's brother had a nickname. His name was Johnny Jambalaya, Johnny Perkle. He was a chef at,
I didn't realize that was her brother.
oh, absolutely.
I'll be.
I met some great guys, brother. I mean, Dr. John came to the camp that we had in Lake Barrett and spent time at the Red Goose with us. I mean, he was a close, in fact, he gave Johnny the name, Johnny Jambalaya.
Wow. So, when did you start getting the mindset of what your career was going to be? And I'm not talking about judge yet. You had a lot to do before you would judge, but when did that start percolating in your mind that this
Well,
is the direction I want to go in?
I never had any thought of being a lawyer
Really?
until I was a senior at Nichols. Growing up, high school, what happened was I really wanted to be an engineer. And I had done well in school, and but at Nichols, you couldn't have a 4-year engineering degree.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was in accounting. I got in accounting in my junior year of high school because we had done pretty good in baseball and kind of certain, not too certain, but certain that we were going to get baseball scholarships to Nichols, and Ronald did, and he got into accounting. And when I graduated from high school, I got a baseball scholarship and went into accounting too. Thought I was going to be an accountant. Russell Ayo Jr. was a classmate of mine, and he was in accounting, and his daddy had an accounting firm, and we were supposed to either get close to that firm or join the firm. And my senior year in college, Russell and Gordon Hamden, who was a lawyer, I think he's retired now in Thibodeau, we were all in accounting together. They started talking about going to law school at LSU. I said, go to law school? I thought we were going to be accountants. They said, no, let's go to law school. About that same time, I was minored in economics, and Dr. Louis Rodriguez, who was the head of the economic department, had a note on the bulletin board in Whitehall, David Richard, see me. I said, what is this about? So I go in to see him. He says, have a seat, David. He said, listen, I've talked to Dean Stanley, who was head of the applied science department, and Dr. Galliano, who was the president. We want you to teach economics at Nichols. I said, man. He said, we have about 8 fellowships that you can choose from: Florida, Miami, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU. And Dr. Unbako, who was an assistant professor in economics, was going to Mississippi State. And we had a class of about 60 or 90, 60 guys, and I think I made the only A in the class. And I think Dr. Unbako, along with Dr. Rodriguez, had a lot to do with that. And I said, well, Dr. Rodriguez, Russell, and Gordon are talking to me about going to law school. He said, well, I'll give you 2 weeks, and you got to let me know within 2 weeks. But Connie and I were married at the time. I think she was pregnant for Lisa at the time, and talked to her about it, and we decided going to law school would probably be the best thing for me to do. So about 2 days later, after that talk, I went in and told Dr. Rodriguez to thank him, tell Dean Stanley thank you, Dr. Galliano, but I was going to law school, and went off to law school.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
So it took you that long to decide.
I had no idea in college and high school that I was going to be a lawyer. It never even crossed my mind, let alone a judge. But Connie had a big part to play in that. She had finished her junior year and lacked, I think, 15 hours to get her degree. We found out there was some openings for elementary teachers at Plaquemine, Louisiana. So we drove down to Plaquemine. Mr. DiStefano, he didn't call himself DiStefano. My coach in baseball was Vince DiStefano, but was a Di Stefano. So Connie had won the Carson Award, which was the outstanding student teacher after her junior year. So we took her GPA and went to see Mr. Di Stefano. He took in the room by himself. He probably in there for half an hour, which seems to me a half a day, waiting to see if she's going to get a job. So he comes out of the meeting and he says, David, I'm going to hire your wife, Connie, on one condition. And I said, oh, Lord, what's the condition? She finds 2 more teachers just like herself that haven't been certified to come teach at Plaquemine. So I said, oh, we got the job. So Connie was taking home $280, and we went hog heaven, lived in the student apartments, and went to law school. And Michelle was born during law school, and we went back. After my freshman year, we went back to Thibodeau so she could finish summer school and get her certification and teach, and she did. We moved out, somebody moved our apartment, and we moved back to my mama's little house that they had on the 2 lots they bought. And when she got her 15 hours and graduated, went back, and she was teaching at Plaquemine, bringing back $580 a month. We thought we had died and gone to heaven, man. 500. Rent was $75, and we could live on that. So
I hear that story a lot, especially if it's the man that's ascended. And of course, you did. Your career ascended very nicely. But Miss Connie had to do a lot of sacrificing to get you there and really pay the bills until you got there, right?
absolutely. In fact, when we got to law school, they had built a new bridge from Port Allen to Baton Rouge. She had to take a 7 o'clock ferry every morning with 2 or 3 other teachers that were either in school or living in East Baton Rouge to teach at Plaquemine. So she had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go teach, and I took care of Lisa, my oldest daughter, until she got back from school. We had her. In fact, that worked out pretty good. What happened was Connie was in education at Nichols, and Joe LaBruza's wife, Nelwyn, was in courses with Connie and knew Connie, and called Connie and said, listen, Joe and I are leaving. We have a great babysitter, Lou was her name. And she's going to babysit for Mike Ferris, who played linebacker for LSU. And Mike and I got to be friends. We played golf together. And anyway, what happened is Newman asked the Ferrises if Lisa could go to their house and Lou could babysit for both of them at their house. And they agreed to that. I mean, it was no problem. So that was another interesting thing that helped us, that we were able to find a babysitter through Joe LaBruza and Mike Ferris.
You were Mr. Mom before you were judge.
I'm telling you.
That's versatile, you know?
Yeah.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.